Good morning. Ted Brown with Blackwood Guitar Company here in Ottawa, Canada. This morning I'd like to go over the process of French polishing using shellac. And this is what raw shellac looks like by the time we get it, that is. It's actually excreted by bugs over in Asia onto tree branches. People then break down the branches and or scrape the raw shellac off, and through several processes of bleaching and de-waxing, we eventually end up with what we call super blonde shellac. I hope you can see that on the camera. It looks kind of like peanut brittle without the peanuts. Beautiful stuff, great to work with, safe from a health perspective. I really enjoy using it. So today we're going to teach you how to mix the raw shellac flakes with alcohol, and you usually use ethyl alcohol. We get the sort from the store. It doesn't have to be any particular brand, but we get the sort from the store that has some bad things put in it so you won't drink it. But basically this is called denatured alcohol. I'm going to put this little bit of shellac flakes in, and we're going to add a bit more till we come up to, this is making up my stock for the next few weeks. So I'm about 5/8 of an inch there. The mixture, you can get all excited about measuring it out. I learned to do this from James Krenoff in California back in 1993. And we eyeballed it quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is put about this much. What is that? About 7:1 by volume. It's going to take overnight for this material to dissolve. So you have to make it ahead of time. There we are. I usually give it a nice swirl to get it started. Now, to accelerate the dissolution process, you can put it in warm water, or you can put it in water you're heating. But remember, this stuff's alcohol, so you don't want to create a fire. What I do is I put it in my laundry tub with warm water and let it sit overnight. Sometimes I have to give it a little bit more warm water, a little bit of agitation, and we're there. I take this and put it into a squeeze bottle like this, and this one, it's pretty obvious because you use alcohol, your labels will always rinse off, which is not so handy, but the blue tape reminds me, and the color reminds me that this is shellac ready to go. The other items we need are a little bit of oil. Olive oil is used sparingly to help spread the shellac. It gives you a nicer finish. We use that more towards the end of the process. And then we have to have a fad, and fad is F-A-D. It's always kept in a jar. And what it is a cotton rag with a little bit of cheesecloth inside. Okay, so what you do is you just get this little bit of cotton rag, roll it up, and make a pillow sort of arrangement out of it. Now this one's about had it, so I'm going to make a new one this morning just to show you. Sad day in the shop, have to cut my Guinness towel up. But I'll tell you, tea towels are the right consistency. Jean material is a bit heavy, but if you go right to a cotton t-shirt, I find it doesn't work well at all. The sort of the nap of the rag is important. So, well, let's cut the beer glass out this morning, and the end of the toucan's nose. Sorry, toucan. It has to be an old rag, because if it's a new rag and the colors come out, that's not so good. So I'm just going to use the same old cheesecloth. I'll plop that in the middle. So I've got about a 6-inch square here, and I'll just turn the corners in, and presto, we have a new fad. A fad ends up being pillow shaped, and we want to charge the fad just by applying a rather generous amount initially because it's a new rag. And you see me tapping it. What that does is that distributes the shellac, and it also gives me a sense of how wet it is. The fad should never be wet. This is important. The fad should never be wet. It should be moist. Neither should it be dry, it shouldn't be wet. If it's wet, it will take off the finish you just put on. So that's not so good. Okay, let's clear the bench. Now I've got a guitar here this morning that's well on its way. I've already, excuse me, walking out of camera range, I've already done the back of this guitar. This is beautiful granadillo. I love this stuff. It's a great guitar wood. Very similar in response to Brazilian rosewood, and it's not an endangered species. So, lovely bit of sapwood up the center, lovely sides. I've done back and sides, and we always do the front last. Inevitably, you'll get dents as you work on a guitar. So I've got a big piece of foam here. I've got a handle which just goes in the neck slot here, the dovetail slot, to help me hold on while I'm doing the French polishing. So let's get everything where I would normally have it. Get our fad. It's not wet enough, so I'm going to apply a little bit of shellac. And the process is like this. We come down like an airplane landing and go off the end of the runway so that we don't have a definite start point, which will just leave a blotch. So I come down, land, and go off, and I overlap each pass significantly. So I'm doing at least 50% overlap as I go across the guitar. Now, when I started this guitar top, what I did was I took a paper towel and soaked it with the shellac and wiped down. It does two things. It soaks the guitar top with its first coat of shellac, and it wipes out the dust that is inevitably in the guitar fibers after sanding. So give it a good clean, let that dry. You want to be careful that if you have colored woods and white woods, that the color doesn't leak from one to the other. So when I started initially, I kind of avoid the rosette, and then I come in and I do the rosette and let it dry up. You want to kind of seal things up, then you can get into your French polishing. Again, apply shellac, tap it. It's too wet right now. There, that's about right. And away we go. With the airplane motion, landing and taking off. Now I can go around the sound hole by just doing the top side, go all the way down the guitar with overlapping passes, and then do this wee bit that we missed up at the front. One more time. This is important. If you don't get it right, you'll wipe off what you've just put on. Now the alcohol is great stuff because it evaporates very quickly, and by the time I do my next session of passes, it's already dried. So how long do you do this? Well, you can do this for about 15 minutes. I'm going to do another pass, a little bit more shellac, pat it until it's right, and I end up with a nice brown hand eventually, but that'll come off easily. A little bit of alcohol and a little bit of elbow grease and some soap, and you'll have that off. Okay, so I've gone, about 4 more times. Once it starts to build, then you'll want to bring into action a little bit of oil. Now I say a little bit, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about a 1/16 of an inch line across my rag, my fad, redistribute that, and then apply some new shellac, and off we go. What that little bit of oil does is it helps distribute the shellac, and if the shellac starts to get a little bit tacky as you get thicker in your application, it helps it flow. Okay, so I can just keep doing this, and like I say, you can go for about 15 minutes. And away we go to the bottom side of the rosette, then all the way down, and I finish off on the lower bout just like so, and there we go. So I don't need to repeat this over and over. You've got the idea. This takes 20 to 30 hours to do the entire body. It happens over a week or so in time, and then ideally you want to let it sit for at least a week. I have a friend who does a lot of French polish work. He's an excellent craftsman. He says he likes to wait 3 weeks. So that's up to you. It takes time to harden completely. It will not be as hard as any sprayed finish. The sprayed finishes are harder, but they rob you of sound. The reason we go back and do this 20 to 30 hours of work and mix shellac in our own shop is it's important to keep the finish thin. I love shellac finish. It ends up the thinnest finish. It doesn't muffle the vibrations of your guitar, especially in the treble end. This is so important. I put on an oversized pick guard on my guitars. I usually go see-through on the pick guard because the shellac is a little bit softer. So you will get little dings and bumps over time, but I just call them beauty marks, and I make that choice. Shellac, better sound. Spray finish, you lose a little bit. It doesn't rob you completely. Like there's other types of spray like polyurethane, like nitro, which is the traditional finish on many guitars, or these days the water-based. And I also use a water-based. If somebody wants a harder finish, I can do that. But it just rounds off the top end of my my spectrum. It's most noticeable in the high end. So that's why I prefer shellac. Not a whole lot more to say. You can get the super blonde flakes that are local Lee Valley, I believe. I buy this from another supplier out in Saskatchewan. Not a lot else to say. I'll do this for 15 minutes, let the guitar sit for a couple of hours, do it again for 15 minutes, and after we've built about 4 sessions, a session is the 15-minute time period, then what I'll do is I'll sand it back with 600 paper and then get at it again. We go through the whole process over several days until we feel we've got enough build on the guitar. Then we sand it back and we cut it back 600, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and then I go over to the polishing wheel. So the finish is spectacular, the feel is great, and I love the sound. Thanks for watching.